After 5 years, the Canadian Premier League's best regular season team finally got their hands on a trophy, and here's how they did it.
You know, if you're going to compete for the regular season and finish at the top of the pile, you've got to share the energy.
We can be heroes.
This weekend, Cavalry FC were crowned the regular season champions in the Canadian Premier League, winning the 2023 Canadian Premier League Shield, as well as a berth in next year's CONCACAF Champions Cup. This is a huge milestone moment for the club. And Alex, I think it's time that we recap their season a bit. And to start off the year, Cavalry honestly did not get off to the best start. They drew 5 straight matches. They dropped 6 leads in that time. And then they finally beat Atletico Ottawa 2-0 on May 21st for their first victory of the season. Now, this, funnily enough, was the first game they tried a back three, and that tactical shift ended up being the thing that could have defined their season.
Yeah, absolutely, because since then, they've been flying. The back three has been a staple of their identity after, they struggled a bit with the four. To be fair, it took a minute to gel. They didn't win game number 2 and all the way until game number 9 when they beat Vancouver FC 3-1. And then after that, they didn't look back. They had 12 wins, 1 draw, and 4 losses in the 17 games they played since. That's 37 points, including now a 7-game undefeated run to clinch the title, in which they've won 6 and drawn 1 in an absolute just dominant run of form from these Cavs.
Now, I think it's only fair to take a look at some key players for this Cavs side, and we're going to start with Marco Carducci. Now, this is a player who's been with this side since day one. He's the skipper of this team, and I've said this many times, Alex, but I think he's the best keeper in the Canadian Premier League, and I also think he's the most consistent, and he showed that this season.
Well, if I'm going to highlight a name to start, I think it has to be Dan Klomp. He's been a defender with the club for a few years now, but he spent most of his time at fullback just because Cavalry's had exceptional center back depth. This year, though, some departures, some injuries, he stepped back into his natural center back position. It's worth noting, and boy, he does look like a natural back in that position. He's been so down on both sides of the ball, chipping in with some goals offensively, just being so dominant defensively, and he's made the life of those around him, including Carducci, that much easier, and I think that deserves to be recognized.
Now, Klomp could be in the MVP talk. So could Ali Musi. This is a player who, in my eyes, gets better and better every season he's been in the Canadian Premier League. Everything goes through him in this attack. He scores goals, he gets assists, but even when he doesn't get credited as a goal and assist, everything just goes through him. He creates so much. He's got a wand of a left foot, and I think he's really taken a massive step this year to be one of the best players in this league.
Well, we talk about Cavalry and their identity and their way they just want to win every game. I don't think there's anyone that exemplifies that better than Sergio Camargo. This is one of their first signings in club history, not just day one. This is day zero kind of guy, Camargo, and he's still performing in year 5. He scored fittingly the goal that clinched Cavalry the title, just showing the importance to his team. And what's great about Camargo is that he gives you so much on the ball, on the pitch. He's talented, he's creative, he finds space between the lines, he scores goals, he assists them. But then it's just his work rate, his attitude, his desire, his just play as a leader. He's everything that Cavalry wants to be, and that's why they are where they are.
Now, Alex, we could keep going back and forth like this, but how about we do a couple more honorable mentions and then we move on?
For sure. I think Bradley Camden at the back deserves a shout. As we mentioned, some injuries back there could have sunk them, especially to one like a Callum Montgomery. Camden slotted in, wasn't even signed on day one, but he just came right in, picked up, and has been a key starter. Eric Kobza has been a revelation out of U Sports as Cavalry continue to find some gold in the U Sports draft. The likes of Victor Laturi, Joel Waterman. Even Easton Ongaro was drafted by them, even though he never really played with them. And you can add Eric Kobza to that list. He's been a revelation at both in midfield and at center back with all the injuries. Then Shamit Shom, they poached him from their rivals, FC Edmonton, on the other side of the Al Clasico. And Shom's been a great addition. You can see why he was such a heartbeat for those Edmonton teams. He's so versatile. Has played fullback, has played in midfield. It's everything you want from a versatile midfielder, as well as Charlie Trafford in midfield. He's also one of those guys that kind of exemplifies Cavalry values with just that work rate, that hustle, that desire. That's, that was key, especially on the leadership side, because they lost a guy like Mason Trafford as he retired. This is, of course, Charlie's cousin, and Charlie's just stepped up and really filled some of that leadership void that his cousin left. And then lastly, I think you have to shout out Meyer Bevan. He is the team's leading goal scorer, and he scored a lot of clutch goals early in the season when Cavalry maybe wasn't winning, wasn't finding their form. And yeah, maybe he hasn't been scoring as much as of late, but without some of those goals early in the season, they might not have a title at this point.
And you wonder why this team has won this title. Well, we just went over about 9 players who've had big seasons, and this is why that they were so dominant come the end of this season to take home this title. But Alex, when we focus back on this season, there's always a key moment or maybe a key match that you take a look at and you're like, that's the moment I knew that Cavalry was going to go on and win this title. I think we probably both know where we're going here, but tell me a little bit about that Forge FC versus Cavalry FC match where the Cavs won at home 3-0 on August 4th.
Yeah, that one, it just felt like it changed because at that point it was close. Like Forge was right on the doorstep. This was a real 6-pointer. And it wasn't so much that Cavalry won. Like Cavalry has beaten Forge before. This is a great back and forth rivalry. We've seen it over the years. But it was just the manner in which Cavalry won. Like that might have been the most one-sided matchup between these two teams ever. Like Cavalry just completely blew the doors off. Forge could not get into the game at all. And it was just dominant because I don't even think at this point we'd seen that from Cavalry. Yes, they've been winning a lot of games, but they've been grinding. They've been, snatching 1-goal wins, which they've done the best this year in CPL. But for them to go out and dominate Forge like that, I think that really defined their season.
That Cavalry win against Forge was a statement victory, and it's something, like you mentioned, that they never really done before, winning in that type of fashion. Well, an honorable mention to another match is something they never did before either, and that was going to Ottawa and winning, and they did that in a 2-1 win on September 2nd.
Yeah, that one was a real definer as well for me, I think, watching, because, yeah, they'd never won in Ottawa before, and it was something that was fascinating in the lead up to that game. Tommy Wheeldon Jr. saying, like, yeah, this is a big deal. We want to go win in Ottawa. It's something that's a key piece missing for the club. And they go out and they were very good. They were up 1-0. Ottawa equalizes late on 88th minute. Like, oh, here you go again. Ottawa might go on and win. Yet what did Cavalry do? They keep after it. 97th minute winner from Willie Akio. Tommy Wheeldon Jr. is out there with the ear to, hand to ear Jose Mourinho style. I think that was one where you could really see the confidence of Cavalry, like, oh, we did that. Like, we hadn't done that very often. And I think that it's another one to exemplify their title hopes.
It was definitely a very impressive victory over Ottawa, but Alex, I want to know what impressed you the most about this Cavs side this season.
Yeah, I mean, again, we could go all day, so I'm going to keep it simple. For me, it's the depth, because I think it's been impressive to see how they haven't been able to put out their best 11 on the field for much of the season. I think you go back and you can even argue what is their best 11. I think you're leaving out some key contributors if you do, and I think that's impressive because in a league with so much travel, with there's a Canadian Championship earlier in the year, etc. Injuries happen, you have to rotate. Yet every time Cavalry rotates, they don't miss a beat, and I think that's very impressive, and that's why they were able to pick up so many wins late in the season where other teams burn out a bit because it's a long season.
I struggled a bit with my answer here, Alex, but I'm going to go with mindset, and I'm taking a quote from Tommy where he said, "New Cavalry, old values." And what I liked about that quote is the fact that what made his teams, he still has those type of values, but they do it in a different kind of way. And the mindset of this team I've loved throughout this season because they got off to that slow start, but they found a way to persevere. They changed a few things. They've had a couple players that they lost this season. They brought in Shom, who is a huge plug and play type of player, as well as Akio, who despite scoring goals for fun and playing in Europe, he couldn't even find a way to start consistently in this side. They just have a great mindset, and come the end of the year, come crunch time, they found a way to be absolutely dominant. Instead of a couple teams playing hot potato, who wants to win this league, they took full advantage of it, and it's the mindset of the players and this side, and they're definitely the deserving winners. We are doing this week's episode a little bit different, but we are going to quickly touch on the power rankings. Alex, who were the movers and who were the shakers?
Well, Cavalry and Forge lead off 1 and 2 respectively after some good weekends. The biggest mover, Vancouver, who jumps up 4 spots to 3rd place after back-to-back wins. Meanwhile, Pacific drops 1 after their loss to Forge. Halifax also drops 1 after their loss to Vancouver. Valor is the other riser as they go 2 spots after their road win over Ottawa. Meanwhile, Ottawa drops 2 points after that home loss. They're in 7th. Meanwhile, last place is York, who have lost a string of games, including the latest 1-0 loss to Cavalry at home.
Now, the fact Ottawa and York are chasing a playoff spot but are bottom of the power rankings is not a good sign. So, Alex, I think it's time that we focus a little bit in on this big playoff picture. There's a little bit of confusion that I know of. It's not the most straightforward, but maybe you can help out the audience to understand this entire playoff picture.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a bit something different. the big idea is to really reward those for performing better. And of course, you can say, well, in the old format, if you finish first, you play the fourth place team. But also, as we saw last year, that's not much of a reward. Ottawa played Pacific, and it was a great tie. Whereas now you genuinely get more home games and less games if you finish higher up in the bracket, which is what you want. So because of that, fifth place and fourth place, they will play each other first in an extra, almost a play-in, like a wild card game of sorts, 4 hosting 5. Whoever wins that will move on to the next round. It will be held at the same time as 1 versus 2. 1 will host 2. What's great is the winner will then go on and host the final. They go straight to the final, get that out of the way. But the team that loses, they're still alive. For some wondering, okay, why are 1 and 2 playing each other early? It's like a curling system. You stay in. Meanwhile, the winner of 4v5 will go play 3, who's waiting. They have a few extra days. 3 will host the winner of 4v5. Then the winner of that, they will go to the loser of 1v2. They will play there for the second spot in the final. And then from there, single game final at whoever ended up hosting. So hopefully that helps clear. Basically, the higher you finish, the more incentive you get. So Cavalry right now, they're going to have the nicest route to the final and give them that chance at winning that double as a reward for their regular season success.
See, it's not confusing whatsoever. So let's help you guys out even further and take a look at each club and the permutations around what's going to happen to them. Starting at the very top, the brand new CPL Shield winners, Cavalry FC, will host the second place team at home. There's no real change there. That match will happen on October 14th.
Meanwhile, for Forge, they have booked a playoff spot and they're guaranteed top 4, which, again, another incentive is that you finish top 4, you're guaranteed to host a game of some sorts in the playoffs, which is always huge. So Forge is guaranteed one of those games. And if they win this weekend, they're guaranteed top 3 no matter what happens. And should Pacific draw or lose to Vancouver, Forge would be guaranteed to finish top 2 and play Cavalry in that game.
As for Pacific, they're guaranteed top 4. A win guarantees them top 3. To finish top 2, however, they're going to need a little bit of help from some others, and they need to gain 2 more points than Forge over the next 2 matches.
As for Halifax, it's simple for them to make the playoffs. You win or draw against Forge, you're in. If not, they're also in, though, if York loses to Ottawa, so they could get some help on the out-of-town scoreboard. They can also guarantee top 4 in that home playoff game, which, by the way, at Wanderers grounds would be quite the spectacle if they beat Forge and York either beats or draws Ottawa. For Halifax to book top 2, which they could still do, by the way, there's a chance Halifax makes that host the final. It's a bit more complicated, though. They have to win both games. They need Pacific to not win either of them. They could draw both, but then if they do, it would come down to tiebreaker, which again is also complicated. And they also need Forge to lose their last game, because Halifax, of course, is playing Forge in the next game. And because of those aforementioned tiebreakers, while that scenario would tie all teams on 11 wins, they would also need to make up goal difference. Forge is currently at +9, which Halifax can make up by beating them, of course, because it's a 6-pointer. But then they'd also need to catch up to Pacific, who are at 11. Halifax, for context, is currently at 5.
For Atletico Ottawa, they need to beat York, and if they do so, they are in the playoffs. If they draw, they must match York's result the following week, and if they lose, they need to beat York's result the next week. For Ottawa to host a playoff game, they can do so, but only as a 4th place seed. To get that, they need to gain at least 3 points on Halifax. For example, if Ottawa gets 6 points, Halifax can't get any more than 3.
As for the last team in the playoff race, York, if they lose to Ottawa this weekend, they're eliminated. If they draw, they will need to win their final match of the season and hope Ottawa loses their match, or Halifax lose both of their final matches. And York can technically host a playoff game, but let's just say they're going to need wins and a lot of help.
Vancouver FC eliminated Valor midweek and then ensured that Halifax would have to wait to clinch at home, claiming their first back-to-back wins and definitely playing spoilers.
Despite being eliminated, Valor did well to go to Ottawa and pick up a win, disrupting Ottawa's playoff hopes in just their 3rd road win of the season. Yet what that shows between Valor's win and Vancouver's win, that those bottom 2 teams are not giving up any easy points right now. So if you're playing them over the last 2 weeks, be careful.
With only 2 matches left in this season, every single game going on this weekend is important. So to end off the episode, we're going to focus in on a different race. Not the playoff race, but the Golden Boot race. So our burning question of the week is, Alex, who do you think is going to walk home with this season's Golden Boot?
It's such a tough race. I mean, Ollie Bassett kind of leads the way with his 11 goals. But then after that, I mean, Taron Campbell's got 10. Meyer Bevan's got 10. But they've slowed down as of late. So is Bassett. For me, I'm going to go for a bit of a dark horse. Rubens Passius. He just missed out last year by a goal. He has 9 goals this year, so he's 2 off first. But he's been in great form as of late. A hat trick, Recently scored against Pacific. He's been scoring against everyone for Forge. I think he can do it.
If you want the opportunity to win the latest edition of Derby Magazine, find OneSoccer on social media, reach out to us, and answer our burning question: who do you think will win the 2023 Canadian Premier League Golden Boot? We will pick a winner at random, so best of luck, everyone, and be sure to tune in for next week's update.